Test. All right, that is your mic. This is my mic. And I will start a voice record as well for Tom because he insisted I have backup and I don't want to let him down. Okay. All right.
Right, shall I begin?
We are rolling.
The Spontaneity Shop presents The Guilty Feminist Watchers and Just Like That, the Sex and the City Reheal, with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Natalie Bochenski. Season 3, Episode 3, Carrie Golightly. So, Nat, we are here in Perth in Australia, and you are my guest for this rewatch episode.
I'm so excited.
I'm excited too to talk about it because, you know, we love the original Sex and the City as a problematic friend from the past. And now, in the spirit of family, we're able to criticise the reboot. In this episode, Carrie goes to Virginia to speak at an event as an excuse to see Aidan and traffics Adderall for his son at his wife's request across state lines, which is apparently illegal. Lisa's editor leaves her in the lurch for her documentary to go and work for Steve McQueen, and it takes Lisa the whole episode to apologise and admit she's being selfish, and she has to mash potatoes to get through it. Charlotte stays out and paints the town red with the younger gallerinas and then realises she's not cut out for late nights, which is exactly what happened in Season 2, Episode 10, 5 episodes ago, because we are recycling storylines already, apparently. Miranda invites her BBC producer friend out on a date, and they do the dirty dancing gong heartbeat thing, which feels like mad foreplay, but nothing else happens. Why not? Anthony wants to pimp out his Italian boyfriend Giuseppe by making him pose in a denim onesie at the front of the shop, but Giuseppe says he doesn't want to be objectified, and then finally gives in. And it seems the moral of the story is, if you love someone, you should squeeze yourself into something tight to sell their wares to prove it to them, I guess. What is this show again? All the women sit around eating baked goods in Anthony's Hot Fellas bread shop. This is the most unrealistic part of this highly unrealistic show. None of these women eat bread while they're filming. Second only to Seema and Carrie fly economy. It's not going to happen. Seema's boss is retiring, and some realtor from some reality show is buying him out and refusing to make Seema a partner, which original guy promised but hasn't delivered on, so she has to figure out whether to stay or quit while smoking in a chauffeur-driven car like it's the 80s and flirting with Carrie's gardener. Eventually, Seema drives over some spikes while smoking in a rental car like it's the 80s and takes it as a sign she should start her own business. Harry wets his pants in a nightclub because apparently he can't work a button fly, and then instead of leaving quickly like a human being would, makes Charlotte take full body pictures of him for Instagram with wet pants. I haven't been this disgusted since Aidan licked his hand in a pickup truck 2 episodes ago. Aidan invites Carrie to stay over in Virginia, but puts her in his guest house and doesn't stay with her even for an hour. So they sleep separately for literally no reason, despite the fact he just rocked up at hers unannounced last episode. This is the weird behaviour of no one ever in the history of humanity. But on the upside, it helps her write another paragraph of her bad historical romance novel. So this is what actually happened. We will play out Rewriter's Room game later where I pitch how it could have been. Natalie, what did you think of this episode?
This episode was called Golightly. Sorry, Carrie
Golightly. Which
Easy
was,
breezy.
Yeah, which is a reference to Breakfast at Tiffany's.
So I thought maybe it should be titled instead Dog's Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yes, very good.
That's the best joke I could come up with. It felt all over the place. And I guess it was people in Virginia, so there's a bit of travel, but it just felt a bit disjointed. And I was trying to play your writer's room game because it's been established now in the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I really struggled to find connective tissue.
Me too.
Okay, good.
So,
okay, all right.
The first 2 episodes I did it. I did one about Fallen Angels and I did one about the Pied Piper.
Yes.
Thinking these would be classic Sex and the City episodes if we
Thematic.
if we just a few more jokes and we brought these themes to the fore and stitched them together. I had a go today. I had a go.
You had a go.
It's not as good as the last 2, but I'll give it a go. They actually promised a theme. I don't know if you noticed this in the first scene after Carrie talks to her publisher. Anthony, in Hot Fella's Bread, comes backstage into the kitchen, and there's a chap, one of his hot fellas in a onesie, and he's leaning up against the fridge.
He's having a standing nap.
And do you remember what he calls him?
Sleepyhead?
No, he calls him Ripped Van Winkle, which is a classic Sex and the City pun, because he's ripped, when he's like Rip Van Winkle, he's sleeping. Okay.
Do you think that they just came up with that pun and then thought, how do we retro?
No, because then they come out into the eating space and Carrie's saying, oh, I'm going to see Aidan in Virginia and I'm going to go and have lunch with him. And Charlotte says, isn't that romantic? And Miranda says, yeah, a fairy tale, the one about the woman who's not allowed to see her boyfriend, and so on and so on. And she says, all right, Sisters Grimm.
Yes.
So these are two fairy tale themes right at the beginning.
Yes.
And then they just completely drop it, and there's no reference to fairy tales.
But they already did a fairy tale.
They did, the Staten Island fairy tale. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I decided I couldn't really make that work. I didn't think there was enough in that. But it was weird to have two references to fairy tales thrown away. So I went instead for, because I thought the biggest thing that happened was it's a sign that Seema backs over a sign. So I've gone for this. See what you think. Was an invitation to Virginia the sign I needed to go and visit my boyfriend? Or was the fact that my so-called boyfriend wasn't going to ask me to stay for longer than a long lunch a sign I was in a fantasy relationship? I couldn't help wondering, how much do we ignore the neon signs of our life if we are not ready to read what they say? Meanwhile, on the other side of town, the fact that all Charlotte's Gen Z colleagues were making high-priced sales at the after party seemed to be a sign that she was getting left behind due to being under her duvet by 10 p.m. Miranda, on the other hand, read the sign of 2-for-1 cocktails at happy hour and decided to use it for Dutch courage to ask her crush out. And Lisa didn't need to read a sign in the tea leaves to realise she was being left high and dry by her editor, who signed her resignation letter pretty damn quick when she got an offer from an Oscar winner. Meanwhile, Anthony's Hot Fella's Bread street sign wasn't working to lure in the customers, so he needed a more appealing lure in the form of hot legs on his hot boyfriend. When Seema failed to see the sign that said don't reverse, she got 4 flat tyres and 1 sharp wake-up call that said go forward or go home. As for me, could the sign language Aidan was speaking in be any clearer? You're not welcome here. Virginia isn't your home, and New York isn't for me. When would the neon sign wake me up? So that's my alternative.
Very good.
It's all right. It's not as good as the last ones. It's because it's not as broad a theme. But it's all I could come up with, because honestly, there was just not linking themes this week. Last week and the week before, I could see the linking themes, but they hadn't been brought to the fore. And this week I really struggled because it was just a bunch of stuff.
See, my best effort was Kentucky Fried Dicks. And I don't know if we're allowed to say the D word on the podcast, but it was a very fallow
We air on the internet, and I think that word's already out there on the internet.
Is it?
To some extent.
Are you saying if I search dicks on the internet, something will come up?
Something will come up.
Okay.
You get 1 or 2 hits.
All right, yeah. I'll take my chances. Because I wrote down there was a lot of phallocentric activity. Obviously, you've talked about Harry with the button fly, so his penis not working properly.
Disgusting. Why? It's just sometimes it's like this puerile humour that they do now, where they just go, oh, it's funny if someone can't get to the loo. And I'm like, is it? It is. Well, are
you referring to Charlotte when she had an accident in Mexico in the first movie?
There's been other things. There's been other things, vomiting, and there's just been other things and just like that. There was at least a dramatic purpose for Charlotte not going to the loo, that made Carrie laugh for the first time.
Yes.
There is no dramatic purpose to a lot of what happens. It's just can't get to the loo in time, can't unbutton his fly. Why Carrie okayed those jeans? What's the point of Carrie going?
Carrie didn't even want to be there with him.
But she didn't.
She had to be there to get the Adderall.
He said, I can't walk in these. And she said, just buy them, which Carrie would not. Carrie would take that responsibility seriously and go, they're not for you. They're too tight. They're too young. Yeah. Let me find you something that looks cool.
She likes dressing people.
She loves
but
shopping.
She just couldn't have looked less wanting to be there with Harry.
No, she just didn't want to be there. And she just told him to buy something that was clearly wrong for him because he said he couldn't walk in them. So I would never advise someone to buy something they couldn't walk in, couldn't sit in comfortably. If Harry wants to buy that, he has to go shopping on his own and get it wrong. And then
Yes.
the women have to tell him, honey, you don't do that.
Yes.
Like you know.
But I thought that when he took the photos of himself, like for the gram, that then it would show up the wet patch, that would be the kind of comedic comeuppance.
That would be a consequence.
I don't
that
even
would be
get
a story.
I
and
don't.
There are no stories here to be found.
You know, I don't even get my cool photos. I've subjected myself to a night out in horrible jeans and loud music, and I'm not this person. And I don't even get the social media kudos because I can't post photos of me. Or he posts them accidentally, and then his kids are like, "Oh, we're so embarrassed. You pissed yourself at a nightclub."
But also, that doesn't track with any human behaviour I know. Even if a 4-year-old wets themselves, they go, "Don't take a picture of me." You know, there's
a sort of innate human shame to lose control of your continence.
Yeah. And I don't. By the way, I don't want anyone to be ashamed. There's plenty of people who have incontinence and children have it, and it's not something for shame. But I
meant a personal privacy, like a
privacy moment that you just go. I don't. You know, the thing is, Harry hasn't got incontinence. It's not. He just stupidly didn't go to the loo in time and couldn't unbutton his fly, and I was like, I don't buy this. But okay, that's happened.
I've managed to hold it in for a lot longer.
You would leave. You would just leave. And the way to do that story, if you wanted to, and I don't know why you'd want to, but if you did want to, you'd have Charlotte going, honey, let's get in a photo. And he'd be like, I've got to go. And she's like, you promised we'd have a photo.
Yes.
And him like, oh God, no, I have to. She'd be like, what's that smell? Yeah. And he'd be like, I'm trying to get out of here. I accidentally wet myself. And she'd be a bit horrified and a bit...
Go,
you know, for God's sake.
She is sympathetic, though. She's like, let's get you home. And he's like, no, you stay and sell a painting.
But she's like, oh, my poor honey. I'm like, I just don't know anybody who would not go, leave. Just
are you okay?
Mate, like, leave. Like, I wouldn't shame somebody for doing it, but I would be like... If your partner, because we're all rude to our partners in some way or another, if your partner had wet themselves out, I'd just be like, just go, you know. And I certainly wouldn't stand there and take photos of them for Instagram. If my husband, who is editing this podcast and is horrified by this idea, had wet himself, which has never happened, but had wet himself. And listen, again, some people suffer with incontinence, and I'm not going to shame anybody at all.
I didn't mean to suggest that. I meant to say that I would imagine there's a level of, I need to get myself sorted.
Yes, exactly that. Anyone would. If Tom, for whatever reason, had not been able to get to the loo, and this hasn't happened, but if he did...
He was just really focusing on an intensive scientific discovery.
The last thing he would say is, and now take a full-length picture of me. He just wouldn't even let me take a selfie. He'd just be like, I've got to go.
He'd be like, please, I'm moving out, I'm changing my name.
Take a full-length picture for the gram, and it's so great because the jeans are so dark coloured, you won't even be able to tell they're covered in urine. I'm just like, that is not a human behaviour. But we know that Harry is a proud, wealthy guy about town who's got a lot of big social life. He just wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
It is just not who Harry is.
Wouldn't you just take the photos as soon as you get to the club? So you can leave when you want and you've got the photo.
So
you get that out of the way.
Because you know that at some point in the evening you're going to urinate on yourself. Guys,
have an insurance policy.
Early on in the club, you have those pictures taken. I just was like, just her going, sure, honey. I would just go, this is not the time. You smell of urine, go. Like, it's just, what?
I'm trying to have a reputation here as a Dutch man snorts cocaine.
Yeah, but she's also trying to sell paintings. What are you doing? I just don't know anybody sells paintings at an after party. I'm not sure about this whole thing. I'm sure you sell paintings at dinner parties and, you know, at corporate events and things like that. But I just don't know in the after party.
I think they were trying to wrap up that story. I actually think they put some effort into having a lesson for Charlotte because at the very end of the episode...
It's the same lesson she learnt at the end of last season.
No,
She went out drinking and then she came home without her phone.
But I want to sort of push back a little bit on that. I agree with you. It is the same idea that you've got to try and keep up with young people in this, you know, workplace that's very social and that kind of thing. But this one was to celebrate selling a big painting. She sold a painting or a sculpture or something to Sam Smith. That was hey, we all go out and do shots. And she came back and the message to her family was, I'm going to have to go out for work. I'm going to be out. I'm not going to be here. Harry, you need to pick up the slack. This one was more about, I think, maybe I'm doing them a credit, but I think that the lesson they were trying to infer is she's at a different stage of life. She can sell to people who are at her level in life or at her stage of life. And I think that's what they were trying to do by have that woman come up. She was wearing a pink dress and she said, I want to talk to you about this art piece.
Yeah, and it was one of the mums at the school who helped to get Adderall, I think. So she was Like,
Was it? I didn't think it was.
Well, it's definitely one of the mums at school, though.
Oh, okay.
It's a school mum. So she's like, oh, I can sell to school mums.
She was like, oh, what I bring is a different audience.
Yes.
Because clearly what I wrote down, just to go back to my theme of dicks, is Leah, the curly head girl who's in charge of the gallery.
Oh, yeah.
She was
young woman who she's fancy the Dutch boy.
She's a larger lady. I'm a larger lady. She's a larger lady. And she was very much, and it's sort of that horrible thing of, oh, I know where this is going as soon as she says that she fancies this Dutch guy called Rolf or a Rolf guy called Dutch. She wasn't sure. I thought that was cute. But he's being a Von Dyke to her, as I was trying to make a Von Dyke joke, Deb. You're looking at me with judgment, and I get it. But
okay.
So he was a Dutch guy making a Von Dyke of himself.
A Van Dyke.
Van Dyke.
Yeah.
What am I thinking? I'm thinking of Von Dutch. I'm conflating Von Dutch and Van Dyke, and I got Von Dyke. I haven't had enough sleep today. But he was a dick to her and a dick to Charlotte.
Right.
So that was dickish behaviour. Giuseppe's dick saves the day at Hot Fellas.
Again, what is that storyline?
It's literature. It's high art.
It's awful. It's like Anthony, who loves his boyfriend.
Yeah. Loves him even more in a tight, hot onesie.
I don't understand why he's going, I have to pimp you out at the front. And I just think, also, it's just implausible that all these hot guys standing around the front are attracting nobody, but his boyfriend is suddenly attracting everybody. I'm just like, this is
because he says they're not well hung enough to get people in, which means that his business model is his boyfriend's baguette.
What are you
That's the business model for Hot Fellas.
This is not how women buy bread. It just isn't. I don't buy bread on the basis of being able to see someone's penis through their onesie. I'm just never going to do that. I'm going to feel uncomfortable by it. I don't want to see penises through clothes.
Well, that's where we differ, Deb. Because
if I want to see a penis, I can.
You can just put dick into the internet and something will pop up. Is what I've learnt today.
Yes. And men, in general, are often keen to show it to you. It's not. If I just put on my
often
Instagram,
when they should not be keen.
Yeah, if I put on my Instagram dick pics welcome, that'd be open to my DMs. It would be a fest, and I could see one in real life anytime I want. I don't need to see one with my. I want my croissants separate from my penises.
Well, there's a lot of imagery, with bread and the rising and my bread is risen.
I get it, but it's just the idea that a woman's going to go, no, I'm not interested in any of you. But then as soon as hot boy Giuseppe comes along, is going to go, I'll buy anything that he's involved with. I'm like, that is just not how customers behave. They either want bread or they don't. They might go, oh, some hot guys there, but that's not necessarily. It's not. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. But I don't know what the moral of the story is, except how Giuseppe is a poet. Giuseppe doesn't want to stand there 24/7 for the rest of his life. And that is Anthony's entire business model. Apparently he can't sell bread without this particular man.
I think it's about, maybe building the audience. They come for the dick, they stay for the delicious bread, and eventually they'll just stay for the bread and they don't necessarily need the bait dangled in front of them, literally.
I cannot believe this would
Giuseppe's
work.
throwing out the hook, throwing out the bait on the hook. It's one implement.
Do you have any more examples of this?
Well, I was going to say Adam the gardener, which there's the whole original sin, I think, Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden kind of motif maybe they're trying to develop there. But he did somewhat undermine that with the Home of the Whopper tank top. But maybe Home of the Whopper, as Tina says, a confident man to wear a T-shirt that says Home of the Whopper.
Oh, I didn't get
so
that.
is that like
this
a
is
penis?
Another dick pun.
Yeah,
okay.
dick pun. And then Aidan turns up white knighting at the end, well, brown knighting, one might say, in his old brown pickup truck, which I think is from the episodes when they went up to his country house in his pickup truck. I'm pretty sure it's the same truck or very similar. And is that a reference to his penis?
That truck would not still be on the road, surely. That was like 30 years ago. But okay, they've probably got a similar one. And
I don't know. I thought the whole point was, Aidan's like, he likes classic. He's a big country bumpkin.
Maybe.
He would have the same truck to just tool around in. And is it a reference to his tool that Carrie's jumping back on board the well-trodden...
Very, very likely.
Well-trodden brown
Okay, that's a good, yeah, some good links there. Some good, a very, very good effort on both of our parts to find anything
And
linking these
Miranda
ideas.
navigating life with no dicks. Again, not to not to be reductive or anything, but trying to push that in there. Not the dick, push the.
Okay.
You know what I mean.
We get it.
And
That's good.
LTW acting like a bit of a dick to her editor. That was the best kind of thematic run through I could get, and it's phallic.
I see. Yeah. Yep. No. Absolutely. Absolutely. That works. That works. It's definitely something linking, as opposed to what we ultimately have, which is very little linking. I have a bigger philosophical pullback for this episode.
Yes.
I have come to a conclusion about why Sex and the City was so iconic and enduring. It wasn't just of the moment, it has been enduring. And yes, it's there's problematic things in it, but overall, it has been appealing and enduring in a way that only certain things are. There were loads of things of that era that no one remembers anymore, no one rewatches, that passed the time at the time and people really enjoyed and quoted and all of that, but they didn't endure. So this theory that I have, listeners, is about the philosophical stakes of the show.
I'm lighting a pipe as we speak.
If you could. So there's a screenwriter called Michael Arndt, and he wrote, among other things, Little Miss Sunshine and Toy Story 3, both two brilliant, brilliant movies. And he makes these videos for screenwriters, and there's one called Endings, The Good, the Bad, and the Insanely Great, which is really worth watching. And in it, he talks about the external stakes, the internal stakes, and the philosophical stakes. And what he says is some movies have external stakes and internal stakes, but they're not great movies, and it's because they don't have a philosophical argument. So a philosophical argument might be, in Harry Met Sally, can men and women ever really be friends? Now, the external stakes might be, can Harry and Sally get together because, he's on this side of town, she's on that side of town, is it going to work? The internal stakes might be about love and commitment, but there's this bigger philosophical argument. So his movie, Little Miss Sunshine, he says the big philosophical argument is about winners and losers. And the father in that movie is a failing success coach, motivational speaker, and he's all about winning, but that's external validation. So he's saying to his daughter, who wants to be part of this Little Miss Sunshine young child beauty pageant, he's saying you've got to be a winner. And that's all about the external, how people see you, capitalist metrics for success. But her grandfather says, are you having a good time? Are you happy? Are you having fun? Because that's being a winner in my book. It's not about getting a trophy or making other people happy or having things to show off. It's about, are you enjoying your life? And that's the philosophical argument in the movie being pulled this way and this way and this way and this way. And ultimately, because Michael Arndt believes it's about living your best life and having fun and doing things for you, not doing things for other people, the end of the movie has to be the family having fun and letting go of the outcome, letting go of the idea of prizes. And he says that there's plenty of road trip movies that have external stakes. Are we going to get there in time? Like Little Miss Sunshine. And internal stakes, the little girl wants to win the thing for her own reasons. But they don't have a philosophical argument. And that's why they're not really enduring. What I think about the whole of And Just Like That versus Sex and the City is that Sex and the City had a brilliant philosophical argument. And I believe it was best expressed when Carrie said to the Russian, to Petrovsky, I'm someone who is looking for love, real love, ridiculous, inconvenient, all-consuming, can't live without each other love. And the philosophical argument was, does that exist? Or is that a fleeting fantasy that you might have at the beginning of a romance? But it isn't real. Now, the whole thing, the argument was always expressed in Carrie's column. One week she'd think this big love did exist, it was worth striving for. Another week she'd be disappointed by a man. She'd think maybe it didn't, but she'd always bounce back to search for that, to want that, to yearn for that. And her three best friends represented different sides of that argument. So Charlotte would say, yes, that big love is there. Every week she believed that big love was possible and worth working for and worth holding out for and worth striving for. But her idea of it was very conventional. It was big white dress, 2.4 children, Upper West Side apartment, husband.
It was the external almost.
Exactly. These external symbols of love, tall, handsome husband, whatever it was that she thought it looked like. Fairy tale ending. That's what she thought. And Samantha was like, no, it doesn't exist. Anytime Samantha fell in love, she'd be like, I've been hurt. I don't want it. Pleasure. You should prioritize pleasure, not love. And Miranda was like, love's good as a side order, but you will only be fulfilled by finding your purpose. And that could be your career or somehow your higher purpose, something else that was specifically for you that you didn't share with a man and you didn't give up for a man.
Your independence.
Absolutely, your autonomy and your inner purpose that had nothing to do with love. So she was very upset when Carrie was going off to Paris to be with the Russian without her laptop. Because your column is who you are. And Carrie would be like, it's not who I am, it's what I do. Because she believed that this inconvenient, all-consuming, head over heels love was its own end. And Miranda was always very suspicious of that. Never give up what you do or who you are for this ideal. It's fleeting and it'll only hurt you, it'll only end you. So there were these three different points of view all the time pulling her towards or away from love, and her column was this place. What she did was write about this very philosophical argument in the column. And I think, yes, it was this fantasy about being able to afford $500 pairs of shoes and pairing it with something you'd got in a thrift shop and strutting down Fifth Avenue towards some handsome man waiting for you in a bar and all of that fantasy stuff. But I don't think the show would have been so appealing or enduring without this philosophical argument that its viewers were also struggling with, also experiencing. Is that, should I settle for this guy? Should I get out of my marriage? Should I have a baby? Should I, commit to this? Or is there some other better life for me?
And I think it's really reflected in the fact that the pop culture thing of the time was, you're such a Samantha, you're such a Charlotte, you're such a Carrie. And that's not because, I'm the one who likes shoes, or I'm the lawyer, or it's those kind of fundamental questions of how you see yourself in the world and what your kind of aims and ambitions are, as opposed to just the superficial. It's that thing that drives me crazy about criticism of Sex and the City, is that so much focuses on the fabulousness, the shallowness, the superficial stuff, when, it's Aidan in a pickup truck that is ultimately what Carrie is. Money is not necessarily that factor for her.
She wants this romantic ideal of love.
Yeah.
And for her, it's not tied up in marriage. It's not particularly, she never really wanted marriage. She never really wanted the whole package. She didn't want to have it all. To her, having it all was having this big, complicated, romantic idea of love that possibly didn't look anything like what Charlotte wanted it to look like.
Well, if she's a writer, one assumes she's a reader, and she makes references to Edith Wharton and Henry James and other authors. I'm trying to think through the series, but
she wanted to get married in the library.
So so she's going to have a novel's idea of love that's going to be important to her.
So that's philosophical heart, and the four ways of being pulled, as you say. Are you a Charlotte? Do you, are you a Miranda? You being pulled in these four directions was, I think, what made it enduring. Now, when we've come back to this reboot, I think the problem is there is no philosophical argument. So you've got internal stakes and external stakes. So external stakes, Aidan's family is keeping him in Virginia. Internal stakes, do I feel loved enough by this arrangement? Is this going to be good enough for me? But there's no philosophical argument anymore. And I think it's because at the end of Sex and the City, Carrie got the big love, came to the party and decided he did want this big, inconvenient, all-consuming love with her. So she achieved that. And then he died. And so now on the other side of that, she's like, well, I've proven it's true, but now it's gone and there's a hole there. But in the meantime, Charlotte got her picture perfect ideal. So now she can be a cheerleader for love, but that's not the same as being a human embodiment of it, which is she was before. That's never as dramatic or compelling to have someone on the side going, yeah, I already have that. And yeah, I believe in it for you. Miranda has given up the idea that the career or the purpose is the main event and is now looking for same-sex love that she hasn't had before. She's now more attracted to women. And
Well, she's also given up the kind of the capitalist enterprise of corporate law to go from something more humanitarian and something more human. And
but I don't get the feeling that her job is as important to her anymore as finding this new side to herself.
True.
So she's become somebody different. And then we have Seema and Lisa, and neither of them have a particular stake. It's a little bit muddy. Lisa already has love. She's more of a Charlotte, and she's kind of a Charlotte sidekick. Seema's not quite as pleasure hungry as Samantha, does want love, but not enough to give up her other pursuits. So it's a little muddier where they are. But fundamentally, none of that matters because Carrie is not conflicted in the same way anymore. So I think they should have started this with a new philosophical question, which I think was probably their intention. It's why it's not called Sex and the City anymore. Because the fundamental question now, I think, should be, can you start over in your 50s? And because of the wisdom you got in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, can you do it better, smarter, faster? Can you find your happy place, your purpose, your love in your 50s if you have to start again? And if the question in Carrie's mind was, will I ever be as happy again? Will I ever find this big love again? Or do you only ever get one big love? And do I need to start looking for my bliss somewhere else now in my career? If we had that central question, I think they would have taken a lot of their viewers with them, because a lot of their viewers now are later in life and they've just had a divorce, or their kids have just left home, or they didn't have any kids and they're thinking, what's my place in my 50s? Or their career has become defunct because that job doesn't really exist anymore. And now I have to learn something new or do something new or find a new purpose. So I think if that were the case, then we had Miranda going, I'm starting again with lesbian relationships in my 50s. Charlotte's like, I've really neglected my career and I'm coming back into, and it was a push and pull every week of, am I too old for this? Is this too late? No, I've found this big new way of, being an art dealer, or I'm finding new energy in queer relationships that I never had before. And if they found those dilemmas for those other characters, and at the heart sat Carrie in between maybe Aidan from the past and a new man who could be the future, and they really made something of that, those philosophical conversations, I think it could be really successful.
They once said about Carrie, or there was that great episode where Charlotte said, oh no, you have two soulmates. Oh, you have two now. Yes. And when she, divorced Trey and was like, well, I clearly didn't have one soulmate because that didn't work out. So now I have two. And and Carrie's like, I don't think I have any soulmates. And Charlotte says, of course you have, Aiden and Big. And Carrie's like, so one and two, and I'm done. Wouldn't it be interesting to flip that and go, well, if we always have two, well then one's dead, so he's gone. So now I've got a new slot open for a new soulmate. So you could bring in that new character to represent a different potential path forward.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about that, and just sort of applying, I guess, a real world that might be a bit of a downer, is some of the things affecting women in their 50s, certainly in Australia, where we are right now, but I assume is probably similar in other parts of, developed nations, is in Australia, I think the fastest growing cohort of homeless women are women in like their 50s and 60s because of higher rates of divorce, and women who are maybe just that bit older to miss kind of, I guess, prenups or having careers or flexible arrangements, but they might have been out of the workforce for a long time and they're trying to get back in and it's very, very difficult. Or men have left and taken their super and they've not had any and they're left with very little. That's a very realistic kind of real world application, but to do that with the characters we know, it would have to be Charlotte or LTW, and we don't have the history, I guess, with LTW to really feel it. And I think it's really valuable to keep a loving relationship going, a loving marriage.
I think we did see that in the last season. There was, I can't remember her name now, but there was a friend of Miranda's who ended up having to crash at Miranda's because she had nowhere to stay.
wasn't it Miranda crashed at her place? That was
Oh,
Ari.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But there was definitely that played
that was
out.
covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was covered. But she wasn't homeless. She was still a brilliant law professor who had all the money and disposable income that she needed. She just had not had the child, and the husband.
I knew there was something that they seemed to be camping out together.
That's
because
right.
The husband had left,
they'd split up because they'd tried IVF. It didn't work out, and he obviously really wanted a kid. He found a new partner, and then she discovered that they were having a baby. So he was kind of getting what he wanted, and she was.
I mean, it's a very uptown show, so this might not be the place where they.
That's what I mean.
That,
but what I'm saying is that ties to those new beginnings and starting over in your 50s. The other thing that probably is an effect, and I see why they're not in the show. I guess I'm just pointing out things that, you know, if we're talking about things that affect women in their 50s, it's being that sandwich generation of having kids who are, you know, either still growing up or in their late teens, early 20s, and, you know, life cost of living, they're probably staying at home later, but then you've also got aging parents. And one of the things that this show has never really had is the presence of parents. Miranda's mother died, and that was a big moment in the original series.
But we really don't know much about anybody else's family. I think Charlotte had a brother once.
Yes, Wesley.
Never seen him again.
Never turned up at her wedding.
Never heard of him again.
And Carrie's dad ran out when she was little, but you never hear about her mum or what happened to that.
No siblings.
So they're very much each other's family, which is, you make sense for when you're doing a sitcom and you've got 20 minutes. I think the most we saw is in the last series of the original run is when Steve's mum came to live with them and they looked after her because she was getting dementia. And that was sort of a precursor, I think, to what happens now is people dealing with the aging parents and growing kids and being that sandwich generation. So that's probably, I think, like the topical things you could address, but can you address it in a show like And Just Like That?
Yeah, I think what I would go for is more stuff like having to reboot your career. Like Kim Cattrall said, she suggested, or her agent suggested, that she lose her PR agency. This is when she was still interested in doing it. That she lose her PR agency because of the financial crash, and now she's working for younger people than her because she has to, because she's lost everything in the crash, and she's struggling with working for younger people who, you know, have got in on some kind of, they've got an app or they've got they've got something else. And I think there are uptown Sex and the City world things. One of the things I would love to have seen is, and I say it every week, that Big had lost a lot of money in the crash. He hadn't told her, and that she finds herself not in a good financial situation and has to write books again, or just really wants to write books again, but she's sort of taken her eye off the ball. She's been involved in this all-consuming love. How do you get back in? Because the market's different now, because she's not as popular anymore. She brings a book out, no one really buys it, and then she's got to get on Instagram, she's got to be doing a podcast, something where she is compelled, whatever it is, that she's compelled to write. She's in a bind if she doesn't. She doesn't have either the money or the career or the fulfillment or the something. But everything for Carrie now is a nice to have. And that does not make good drama.
And I really, at the start of the episode, as you mentioned, her agent is saying, well, Google wants to fly you out to Palo Alto, and South by Southwest in Austin want to have you, and also a small writers' fair in Virginia, where she goes, oh, okay, I'll consider that one. I'm like, you'd be doing all of them. Wouldn't, even if you, like, well, for one, there's like an imperative to want to sell books. You have to go work the room. You go on podcasts. You go on TV shows. You go do media.
She doesn't have ambition anymore. And she used to be ambitious. She used to care about things. She was often conflicted. She had imposter syndrome. She'd be like, really? You want to do a book with me? Really? I'm going to fly to San Francisco? Whatever it is. But she did want things. And now she doesn't seem to want anything. She's like, yeah, I could go out to, you know, South by Southwest, but I'm not really bothered. And I'm like, I just want to watch someone who cares, who's striving.
Could I give them the benefit of the doubt and make a link to something that I'd written down about this episode, or all 3 episodes so far, is the fact that she started writing about a woman in her historical romance book, or whatever it's going to be, possibly romantasy, as the agent suggested.
I don't think it's going to be romantasy. I think that was a joke. I think it's going to be historical fiction.
Even at the end, she writes, you know, the woman had gone through a long journey. She hasn't given her character a name yet. She's referring to her as the woman, the woman, the woman. Now, maybe this is just ideation. She's just typing out ideas. She's just brainstorming.
No, I think it's literary style. And she's clearly writing about herself as if she's in the historical past.
But that's the thing. She hasn't given it a name. Has she not seen the image of the woman enough to give her a name, to name what it is.
I think
she's
it's going
writing
to,
about.
I think it's a choice, and I think the book is going to be about the woman.
The
And I
woman.
think she's never going to name that woman. But I think it's a device.
Wouldn't it be interesting if she used that book, which I think they're trying to do, but the writings of that book as a narration through the
I think that's what they're
story.
doing. I think that's what they're doing.
It's a bit clunky at the moment because it's only really coming at the end of each episode.
It's not quite landing.
But if she was saying like, uptown, the woman was struggling to get a new fabric at the haberdashers, and then it cuts to her going, "Oh no, the cat wrecked my velvet," or something like.
Well, maybe they will develop that. Maybe they will develop it. I hope so, but I really do hope they get to grips with more of a philosophical discussion or argument, because I think that's why it just doesn't feel. Nothing feels important. It feels like Lisa gets cross because her editor's leaving, but then realizes she's being selfish. But there's no dramatic purpose to that. That's just things happening. What does it tell me about Lisa? Who is Lisa? Why am I watching it? Because that you could say to me, I felt really annoyed that somebody left my project and sort of left me high and dry. And I could say, I kind of understand it though, given it's such a big opportunity for her, and you'd be like, fair play, yes, I probably should say sorry to her. That's an anecdote. It's what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks. These are anecdotes. There's no dramatic purpose to it. What are we learning? What's driving it forward? And what is the bigger philosophical discussion? Should we do some Easter eggs? What did you notice in this week's episode that is from previous Sex and the Cities? There's often these little echoes, costumes.
There are
hints at things.
So the big one is, which we were just discussing earlier today, and you set me right. I thought that Carrie's top in that opening scene in Hot Fellas was the Chanel top from Hot Child in the City.
Everyone on the internet thinks it, but I have shown you it is not.
It is not.
It's from the same story.
It would be from the same collection or something like that, but it's just slight pattern differences, slight cut and trim differences.
The sleeves are different. The neckline is different. It's from the
Colour
same
placement.
It's from the same story. It's clearly from the same era, but story by which I mean fashion term for collection. But it's not the same top. But there is another reference to Hot Child in the City.
There absolutely is.
What is it?
KFC.
Yes!
And eating KFC. And I was so happy to see them eating KFC. And I would also say that in Hot Child in the City, Carrie ends up with a bag of marijuana, potent marijuana. And in this one, she ends up with a bag of Adderall.
Okay, I've got
slightly different reasons, but
I've got another one. She says she's going to Virginia for work, but while there, she's going to see Aidan for lunch. Very easy breezy. And she keeps saying, easy breezy, i.e., I'm not going to say, Aidan, I'm going to be there. I really want to see you. Just like, oh, I'm in Virginia, might as well have lunch. Where clearly we know she is taking this. She would not go to Virginia for this writer's fair unless she could see Aidan. So it's an excuse. Very easy breezy. What episode does this evoke very specifically?
I know. I've been listening to the podcast going, I'm going to know. I'm going to swear I'm going to know when Deborah asks me questions. Very la-di-da, very, you know what I'm referring to.
Casual, very
la-di-da. Very la-la-la.
Where is she going for work, and what man is she hoping to see? Very casual, very la-la-la. She is going further than Virginia. She's going right across the country.
Oh, is it when she's going to see Big and she goes on the train
to San Francisco
with Samantha? And
she doesn't tell Big she's coming.
That's right. And they're walking
says,
to the train
while
station.
I'm there, I'm just going to message him and go, oh, I'm in San Francisco. Very casual, very la-la-la. Easy breezy. So same absolute storyline. Going to a city for work, ostensibly.
And hoping for sex.
But really trying to get back with an old boyfriend. So it's very, very, very similar. Charlotte does drunk dancing. This evokes, of course,
the
reference we've already made today.
The lesbian episode when she, you mean of the previous seasons?
No, of Sex and the City. It looked exactly to me like a very evocative episode we've already mentioned. Drunk dancing, Charlotte.
Yeah. Toot toot beep beep, that one.
Charlotte does the same drunk dancing on Staten Island.
Yes.
In the Staten Island fairy tale.
Staten Island fairy tale. Yes, sorry, that's what I meant.
So
hello, doctor. Can you help me out, doctor, please? Since my lover left, and she's miming the lyrics, and
Absolutely.
Like, how many Staten Island iced teas did she have?
That's right. That very, very one. Anything else that you saw that spoke to you from a different episode?
The KFC was a very big one.
I didn't see the marijuana to Ritalin, and I'm thrilled and delighted that you saw
Carrie
that.
ends up with drugs at some point. What I was going to say is the key, because it was a big issue in Carrie and Big's relationship, giving
a key.
him a key, or him getting a key, or her getting a key to him.
He wouldn't let her have a key.
And she starts the episode by saying she's going to go down there and present him with a key. She tells Miranda that he doesn't even have a key to this house, and it's his house, so she's going to present him with a key. And then when they get out of the truck at the end, she says, "Oh, and I brought you this." And I thought she was going to pull out the key. I don't know why I thought that.
But it was the bag of Ritalin.
Because I think
he seemed like
he
didn't know about it.
Yeah.
He seemed like he didn't know about it. So Kathy, his ex, has called her and said, "Would you bring it?" But hasn't thought to say, "Don't give it to Aidan, just give it to me."
Or give it to Wyatt.
But I don't think with Wyatt as he is, you would just give all the drugs to that one child.
Of course you would not. Oh my God, you would not.
So she's given it to Aidan thinking he knows, and Kathy clearly hasn't told him, and maybe he doesn't approve of Wyatt being on Adderall.
Or maybe he didn't want Carrie to know. You know, it was a private thing that he was keeping private.
But he didn't seem very happy about it, so that's clearly going to come
But then she
back.
doesn't give him the key. So this whole promise of maybe she'll give it next episode.
I assume but there's a lot of promises that aren't delivered on. Rosemary DeWitt is playing Kathy. Where have we seen her before?
I just want to say Rose DeWitt Bacata from Titanic. No.
We've seen her before in another episode. Do you remember when Miranda got in trouble for not being at work enough because she was with her baby? And there was some
she was
lawyers.
the office gossip.
Yeah, way to watch my back. Yeah,
that was her.
But what's the much bigger link to Sex and the City? Much, much bigger link. In real life, Rosemary DeWitt is married to whom?
A man or a woman?
A man, one of Carrie's exes.
Oh.
An iconic Carrie ex.
An iconic Berger?
She is married to Berger in real life.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love Berger. He's so messed up.
He was great until he wasn't.
He was
probably the right one for her because they're both writers, but then he was too insecure.
He was so insecure and so petty.
If only he hadn't been so insecure and petty, he would have been a great one for her.
They just were such a good laugh together.
They were.
They really were such a good laugh.
He was the best one for her. He just couldn't get over
But the
himself.
thing is I think my favourite episode is the Post-it Always Sticks Twice.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It's because of the way that he breaks up with her that produces that incredible episode.
Absolutely.
That is like my favourite comfort
It is
TV
a phenomenal episode.
So I'm feeling a bit down.
I'm sorry, I can't. Don't hate me.
I just want to have a laugh.
Also marijuana in that episode.
Yes, it's like Carrie's Don Quixote.
Don't bogart the split.
Quest to get high.
Line. Absolutely. So I think that's all I have for this week.
There was something I was going to mention. Aidan gets Carrie all the way to his house and then proceeds to tell her, look, the kids and I have a routine where every night we tell them what the next day is going, we work out what the next day is going to be. And I haven't told them about you. So can you stay in the guest house?
Ridiculous.
Now, a couple of things with that. First of all, the timing. He comes to pick them up from when Seema runs them over.
Mm-hmm.
Tire spike.
Because they're not going to be able to drive back anymore.
They're not going to be able to drive back. But I thought they were just going to drive to lunch.
Yes,
they
actually, that's right, because they flew there.
They flew to Williamsburg and then they were getting a car.
What difference does it make?
Car.
Why don't they just go to lunch and then fly back?
And then fly back. But, he asks her to stay over.
Yes.
So Seema's like, okay, fine, just drop me at the airport. So they go, I guess they drop her straight back to the airport.
But why hasn't he asked her before? Why hasn't he cleared this with the kids? It makes no sense.
So this is my point. He could have said, hey, change of plan. Carrie is stuck from a spike accident an hour up the road. I'm going to go get her. And I might ask her to stay overnight and just clear it with the boys then. Or how long they said it was an hour away. So they get back and it's nighttime. And this is summertime or at least late spring.
So he's left them there alone
So he's left them there, one would assume alone.
Why wouldn't he just stay with her in the guest house at least?
Well, one of them's 20 and the other one's 17. I think it's fine to leave them alone. But surely you'd go, hey, Carrie's coming back.
I think Wyatt's 15.
they would have.
I think the difficult one is 15.
Yes, but the older ones are 2017.
Yeah.
So they're around to look after him for an hour. Cool. But he would go drive an hour, then come back. So 2 hours we're talking about, unless they stop for lunch on the way.
Also,
so maybe 3 hours.
I absolutely understand going, let's stay in the guest house so when they wake up it's not confusing. Like, I'm not just like, oh, here's, I can introduce you properly with your clothes on.
But isn't it going to be more confusing for the boys when they get up in the morning, knowing from the night before that there's a plan, and then all of a sudden Carrie walks in and he's like, by the way, Carrie's here now. Isn't that going to be more confusing than telling them the day before?
I think you were looking for logic where there is literally none. This is not how people behave. I absolutely understand him going, let's stay in the guest house just so that you don't have to wake up in the morning, put a bathrobe on and there's all my grown-up sons there. But he would stay with her in the guest house, even if in the morning he said, I'm going to get up early and go back in and make them breakfast. And then I'll say, oh, my girlfriend stayed in the guest house, I'll bring her in.
I just think the timing is all wrong, because if they had been at the Writers' Festival, the very nice man in the big peach jacket who operated as both the festival PR and the hotel restaurant manager.
Which has never happened in the history of the world.
I mean, I was just thinking, okay, maybe it's a small, very specific hotel-based...
Don't think too hard. Natalie, you're thinking
He's like,
far
I
too
also
hard
ring...
about this is absolute nonsense.
I also run the hotel. So
I manage a restaurant and do PR for a book festival. That is not a thing.
Unless it was a very small, specific hotel-based... these writers' festivals aren't huge earners, so I guess you need a second side hustle.
Sure. Anyway,
but yes, so they have a nice lunch there, but they can't get the fried chicken. So then they have fried chicken for dinner, it seems like, and then the next morning they seem to go and get a car to go drive to Aiden's. So one would assume that, okay, let's give them the grace and say it's, they're going for a lunch. So one would have to assume they're leaving mid-morning. So when they have the accident, say it's maybe 11 a.m. Aiden comes down to get them.
He says it's only 20 minutes away. He's told us it's 20 minutes away.
How are they taking, and it's summertime, so the sun is going to set later.
Yeah, you're right.
So why are they pulling up in the dark?
Why has it taken them 6 hours
to get back?
When he's already told us it's 20 minutes from my house. Because he originally says, I'll come and pick you up. She goes, no, it's fine. We'll rent a car. He goes, it's only 20 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
That's true.
So why are they getting back at nighttime, Deb? How did that happen? Is it particularly early sunset?
They go off to drive to him 20 minutes away.
They screw it up.
Flat tyre. Okay, so it takes Aiden...
an hour for a tow truck and business.
Yeah. So now
they're
an hour behind.
take Seema back to the airport because she's going to fly back.
Yeah, another hour. So we're still at round lunchtime.
Yeah.
We've lost an hour.
Early afternoon.
We've lost 2 hours. But it's 20 minutes back to the farm.
Yeah, even if the sun sets at 6 p.m.
And we get back there, it's clearly like midnight or something because the kids aren't up.
They are asleep, apparently.
He can't go in and say, kids, you know how we always do tomorrow? Well, this tomorrow is going to be different because Carrie's going to be here. You're right. That literally makes no sense.
They just needed a reason to put her in the guest house so she could... And then he literally says, it's a really nice guest house and it has the best AC of the whole place. And then she sits in there talking about the cold wind coming through the windows or something. I'm like, but isn't it summer and hot, or at least late spring and hot?
Again, you are searching fruitlessly for logic. But that time gap is poor. That is poor. They should have just made it dinner. We'll have dinner together.
Yes.
And then tow trucks, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. Oh, okay, it's actually quite late.
Unless they did that? Did they? I'm trying to think. Did they make a reference to delaying it to dinner?
No, they didn't.
Did they say we'll have a dinner instead?
If he hadn't said it was 20 minutes to my house... Unless they were a long way away and he had to come and collect them, but where they were meeting him for lunch was 20 minutes from the house. So maybe they had a long drive to get to lunch. And he said, oh, no, lunch is 20 minutes from my house. But then why would he say... He said, I'll come and pick you up.
Yeah, I don't understand.
He said it's 20 minutes from my house. That's not right.
I just don't know what 20, 17 and 15-year-old kids are going, oh, well, 9 o'clock, I guess we'll be off to bed there. Like maybe because they're country kids. I don't know. But I would assume that if you're coming back at nighttime, the kids are still probably going to be up and you would just go, hey, look, Carrie's here.
If we can get rid of this this really long time jump, which we don't understand, which you've pointed out to me and I didn't even think of, but you're 100% right. If we get rid of that,
finding the weirdest hill to die on.
Do you come into your kids late at night, even if they are up playing video games and stuff? Do you go, oh, I've brought a woman back, which they haven't met yet? I kind of get that. But I just don't understand why he wouldn't stay in the guest house with her. Because he might say, you might prefer the privacy. Otherwise, these boys are going to, a 20-year-old's going to come in and you're going to be in a bathrobe. I can understand if you've got a nice guest house saying, stay in the guest house. It'll be much nicer. But he would come and stay with her, even if it was just for a few hours.
Yeah.
Because they haven't seen each other or made love in a long time.
Or he wants to show her around the guest house and go, hey...
Wouldn't they just... If you haven't seen your partner for ages and they're acting like boyfriend and girlfriend, wouldn't they make love? And then I can understand him going back into the house before the kids get up. But it makes no sense to just go, bye, come back with me, have dinner, stay the night, have breakfast. That's an invitation to sex.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen that lover for a long time. Then, oh, did I say that? I'm actually going to put you in a guest house on your own. And that is torturing somebody. That's kind of embarrassing somebody and torture. Like, she would have not said yes.
I would
have said, oh, don't worry, I'll go back with Seema. Don't worry about it if you haven't told your kids. He waited till he got her there. Last week, Jessica Regan had a theory that this is all karma because of the way she messed around.
I was just about to say Jess's theory that he's the chaos this time.
Yeah, she really messed him around.
He's a messy bitch.
Yeah, and gave him bad karma. And now he's paying her back.
And he's still got the bad car to go with the bad karma. Sorry, that's a terrible joke.
I genuinely do think she is... I cannot understand why a woman of that age and means and experience, who's been around the houses so many times, would put up with this. She'd just be like, mate, you're not ready for anything. You're not treating me with respect. What you're doing means we will never be able to be together. You go have your life. I'll have my life. If we're both available in 5 years and we feel the same, let's start afresh. In the meantime, I don't want to hear from you because you are...
Maybe they're getting to that. I mean, how many episodes is this series?
I don't
10,
know, but it's
11,
so
12?
disrespectful, and she's not behaving as if she's being massively disrespected, and she is. He is deliberately doing disrespectful things. Like, if you go and pick someone up, you say to them, I'd love you to come back to mine, but my boys don't know, so do you mind if staying in the guest house? And we'll see each other for breakfast, but I'm probably not going to come in with you. Then she can make an informed decision. But also, it's
And he didn't
weird.
tell her on the whole trip there, I guess, because she might have given him the silent treatment or something. I know it's the vagaries of filming. You're not going to...
weird. It's a weird thing to do to somebody.
They have a lovely drive home for the hours and hours it takes.
He doesn't even just come in with her for an hour. Like, it's just weird. It's just not...
and if the boys are asleep, like...
It's not what people do. I don't believe any of it. I don't buy any of it. And it's not who Aidan was. Aidan was very straight up, said what he wanted. You know, he was a guy who...
Yeah.
He was romantic. He was respectful.
He was Paul Bunyan. He was
a bit controlling. He was too controlling, but you knew where you were with Aidan. He didn't change the goalpost. Carrie changed the goalpost. Now there are no goalposts. If there were goalposts, he'd eat them in front of you. He's a chaos demon now.
I had a few other things I wanted to just touch on.
Go on.
I actually thought that probably the best dressed outfit in this episode was Seema's business partner, who turns out to be 90 years old. Did you clock that?
Yes.
Where he's like, oh no, I'm 90.
He's not 90. I'm absolutely absurd.
I'm gay, so I'm a straight 70.
Absolutely absurd.
Sorry.
There was no 90-year-old man.
A gay 90 is a straight 70.
It's just absurd.
It was like, no, you're really sprightly. Like, you're not 90.
Because
65?
that man is not 90.
Yeah. I don't know why they did that. Like, why didn't he just go, yeah, look, I'm 65 now and I want to get out?
Yeah, I'm 75 and I'm ready to give up work.
Yeah.
Madness.
90 is quite... Anyway, who was the guy that he wanted to sell to? You mentioned in your opening, Précy, that it was a real estate reality show or something? Is he a real person or is he a character they've invented?
No, he's a real guy off a real reality show.
Oh.
I don't...
Ryan Serhant?
Someone off Bravo. I just saw it online. I wouldn't have known that, but
because I was like trying to do anagrams of his name to work out if it was like
it's a real name.
You know,
it's a real name.
Like remember Trudy Stork, who Charlotte got the...
Yeah.
I was like, is Serhant a word? Is that something I should be... No, so he's
a real reality guy off Bravo.
Well, I thought he was going to be the new love interest for Seema. You remember how Samantha kind of went to work for
still
Richard,
will be, but I don't think so.
Right?
I think this is her excuse to get out on her own.
To leave and start her own group. Well, that's good. I think that's a good move for her. I thought that was quite a positive you know, she made a reference to number twos, you flush it down the toilet. Like I quite liked, and then she had the flip and she said, oh no, it's not the worst thing to be number two to the best realtor in New York. So she's, you know, she's got it good. Why have the fight?
Sure.
But then she has the moment of going, no, I need to, you know, go out and focus on this. So I thought in terms of Seema's, you know, is she going to sleep with the hot gardener? Because he certainly does have tickets on himself. I quite liked the gardener at the end of episode 2 when he showed up, because I was listening to you and Jess like kind of vomiting in your mouth slightly at him. And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't mind him. But then this episode I was like, okay, he literally introduced himself as I'm the Picasso of the garden or something, as voted
and
by
said,
Vogue.com.
I've never found a kitty that I can't tame or something ridiculous. Yeah.
It was very overt. And then he introduced his, I assume, maybe on the spectrum nephew, who could point out the exact make and model of the car, which I took as a signifier of someone who's got a very hyper-focused interest in a specific topic.
Yeah, I think that's they're introducing an autistic character, which will be interesting.
Right.
But I think the gardener himself is just a man fashioned from a dozen or more red flags. He's wearing a Home of the Whopper shirt. He's bragging about himself. He's flirting with a lady smoking in the back of a car. He's more red flag than man at this point. And I look forward to the chaos he will inevitably bring.
I wanted to make it quick because we talked about KFC, and I was delighted to say I am I'm sorry, and it's probably unpopular, but it's my fast food of choice. I do believe that Australia, I think, has the best KFC in the world. I try to taste, I'm sorry, Deb, but the UK KFC, it's rubbish. It's dry, it's overcooked. But here in Australia, everything. I feel like I'm speaking for KFC. If this show isn't sponsored by KFC, it should be. But it reminded me of something from the first episode that I just wanted to mention as an Antipodean correspondent on the Guilty Feminist Watches, and just like that. They have a fundraising party at Red Rooster in the first episode.
Oh, yes.
The restaurant is called Red Rooster, and it's a very hip and happening place. It's where Herbert sings with his a cappella band and gets cool.
But in Australia, Red Rooster is a terrible chain.
Red Rooster is a competitor to KFC, and it's a chicken shop. Yeah. And you go there and you buy your roast chook and your chips and your pineapple rings and your other things. And it's sort of famous for, there was a conspiracy theory going for a while that Red Rooster was a massive front for like drug running.
Oh, really?
Because people would put on social media like, no one has gone into this Red Rooster for hours. Like, I've been sitting outside.
Right.
No one, I'm the only person here. I've been the only person here for hours. Nobody ever comes. How are they in business? There was sort of this big,
a bit like in Breaking Bad. They have that
the chicken shop.
Chain.
Yeah, I think it probably aligned with that. But there was this big fun, just in fun social media kind of conspiracy theory that Red Rooster was a front.
That's so funny.
Which is not, and it's many people in Australia's favourite, chips or chicken shop. So the idea that all these very highfalutin New Yorkers have gone to Red Rooster.
I did note that. And I thought it was funny too.
I think
but
Australians,
I didn't say it because most of the audience would not be Australian.
Well, I wanted to point out that for the Australians who laughed, I was there with you, and for everyone overseas, if you can imagine them all going to McDonald's or
Nando's
or Nando's.
Yeah.
My friend Stu always called Nando's high-end KFC. It's chicken and chips, essentially, just with fancy flavours. The other thing I wanted to point out to you, Deb, and this is something that occurred a bit in the original series, but Carrie's flat in the original series was kind of a reflection of her quirky, slightly chaotic demeanour. And she had the cluttered wardrobe, and she had fashion magazines, and she put stuff in her. She didn't use her oven. She used it for storage. It wasn't a mess. Well, it was messy. It wasn't dirty, but it was, say, messy. And obviously, she's older. She's more curated. But something that really, I don't know why, again, just finding a weird hill to die on, but she never has any chargers. Her laptop, she says in this episode, I've got a change of clothes and my laptop in my handbag. When I look in front of us as we're recording here, I've got a laptop, I've got cables out the wazoo, chargers, I've got a bag over there with other adapters, cables. Carrie has a chargerless, cableless life.
Yeah, she is. She used to be scruffy and scrappy, and it's
she
true.
Used to
she
have
is
to
kind of perfect now. Yeah.
Like, I can't take my laptop anywhere without a charger, because also I have to put other things into it to charge them. It becomes a charging. Carrie just has one phone and one laptop, and it always works and it always turns on, and it's very frustrating.
Absolutely.
And I'm taking that as a metaphor for maybe the series, that she just, her laptop is always, it's just on her desk.
Yeah,
she opens it up. She doesn't have 37 tabs open like I do. And
I know
that's
what
a me
you mean.
thing.
I know what you mean. I would love that house to have more Carrie personality, to have some of her favourite, iconic outfits framed on the wall, or, to have a mannequin in the corner, or to have that lovely sense of street fashion and clash that she always had in her little bedsit apartment. And it's more of a Charlotte house, I think, than what she has now. And I suppose we're meant to think she's grown up and it's different now. But I would love to see some of that old Carrie reflected in her new environment. And
maybe it will happen. She's still building. At least she's let Miranda stay there while she's cat sitting. I don't know why Miranda is renting when Carrie could probably give her a bed and
oh my God,
for
it's
free.
a huge house.
I would absolutely, you wouldn't even have to see each other that often in a house that big.
I just want it to roll into Golden Girls now, where they're all living together.
I do too.
I think that would be hilarious.
It would be so good. Sexy noises behind thin walls, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Tie on the door.
And also the cat tree that she was building. I know people always find out the fashion from the episodes. If somebody could please ping the Guilty Feminist and let them know where to get that particular cat tree, because I have cats and I would like to have that cat tree, because that was a charming little cat tree, the one they were building.
Yeah, gorgeous one.
Really, really cute, and I want it because the problem with cat trees is they are huge, hulking, horrible, blocky, nightmarish things. And in the last few years, people have actually started realizing, oh wait, fashionable people have cats too. Why don't we make slightly nicer cat trees? So I want to find out how to get one like that.
Well, hopefully someone will be able to tell you. Nat, thanks so much for coming on the Guilty Feminist Watchers and Just Like That.
Absolute pleasure. A guilty pleasure, one might even say.
Indeed. Thank you so much. And next week we will have a new guest and we'll be back to take it apart and never put it back together, much like the cat tree. Thank you very much. You have been listening to the Guilty Feminist Watchers and Just Like That with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Natalie Bochenski. The producer for The Spontaneity Shop was Tom Selinsky. The Guilty Feminist is part of the Acast Creator Network. Just Like That is on Max in the United States and Sky Comedy and now in the UK. See you soon for episode 4, Apples to Apples. I don't know why she also said tomato, tomato. That made no sense.
Tomato, tomato.
Yeah, but tomato, tomato means this or that. She says...
I don't go to Williamsburg.
I wouldn't go to Williamsburg.
Virginia. I don't even go to Williamsburg.
Brooklyn. And she's like, tomato, tomato.